In today's video, we have tons of news and rumors to take a look at, including some off-season talk around the Ottawa Senators and the Pittsburgh Penguins. We also have a lot going on tonight in the NHL. It's the final game for the Arizona Coyotes at Mullet Arena. A relocation expected to be announced here in the coming days. We also have lots of information as well on the upcoming playoffs matchups that were clinched last night. We have several signings and updates on some prospects, including a signing as well with Marc-Andre Fleury. Retirement is going to have to wait after all. All that and more coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we have a lot to cover here in today's video. Let's kick things off first talking about last night's action in the NHL. It was a wild night with lots of games that were important with implications, and we saw a flurry of activity in a very short couple of minute span that had a great deal of impact on the NHL's 2024 Stanley Cup playoffs. Of course, we had some important matchups going down, including the Washington Capitals and the Philadelphia Flyers, and the Detroit Red Wings and the Montreal Canadiens, more specifically in the Eastern Conference race. The Penguins are very much in that race as well, but they don't play until tonight. And now it turns out their game is pretty well meaningless after everything got settled last night. But as we knew going into the Capitals-Flyers game, if the Capitals won that game, they would clinch the spot and everything else would be irrelevant. They would beat everybody out. The Philadelphia Flyers, if they could beat the Capitals in regulation, they could still be alive. They would pass the Capitals and they would also be able to clinch it, but it wasn't a guarantee because obviously Detroit and Pittsburgh still had the potential to overtake the Flyers. So it was a lot of, if this, if that happening last night. So of course we saw the Capitals and the Flyers battle till late in the third period in a 1-1 tie game. Now, we had already heard it brought up by several reporters that where the Flyers had to have a regulation win last night or their season was 100% over. If they end up tied late in the third, don't be surprised if they pull their goalie to try to get the extra attacker out, get the advantage, and hopefully get the go-ahead goal to seal a victory. And it's just that a scenario actually did unfold. Now, while that was taking place, we also saw the Red Wings and the Canadiens doing battle for the second consecutive game. And again, the Red Wings battling back after the Canadiens get out to another multi-goal lead. The Red Wings ended up tying that game with only, I think it was 5 seconds left on the clock. I watched the play happen in live real time. The one face-off back to David Perron, the point shot, and it went right in the net. So with the Red Wings tying that game and sending it to overtime, I mean, I guess you didn't know overtime 100% was going to happen, but with 5 seconds left, you knew it was pretty much inevitable. Getting Detroit at least 1 point actually eliminated the Flyers. But of course, at that point, this was all kind of happening within like a minute of each other. The Flyers wouldn't have known yet, pulled their goalie against the Capitals trying to get the regulation win, and ultimately gave the Capitals an opportunity for an empty net, which is what happened. TJ Oshie scores an empty net goal, giving Washington a 2-1 lead. They pulled their goalie again, trying to make up for it. Couldn't do it. Capitals win the game. Detroit goes on to beat Montreal in a shootout, but at the end of the day, it's not enough because the Capitals also got their 2 points and they won the tiebreaker. And Detroit knew as Patrick Kane scored the shootout winning goal, by the time that this had happened, they got the information out of the other game that the Capitals had won the game. So they didn't even really celebrate, and they knew it was over. So I know a lot of people in Detroit especially were pissed at John Tortorella and the Flyers, saying that they screwed the Red Wings because they were already eliminated. But it's like, you know what, if you take a look at it, time of events and the whole thing, breaking it down in real time, there's about, I was watching, I had the Red Wings Habs on my TV, and I was following along with Caps and Flyers on my phone. I was flipping back and forth between the two games on the TV, but at that mere moment, I had it on my phone, the Capitals and Flyers, and the NHL app is not the greatest, and it was a little slow. So to me, it looked like the Flyers had their goalie out before the Red Wings tied it up. I mean, sometimes with TV feeds, there's, slight delays here and there. You don't know exactly, but I know I seen on my phone that the Flyers had their goalie out just as I looked back up at my main TV screen and seen the tying goal go in. So to me, I thought the Flyers did what they had to do, because at that point they wouldn't have known, or yet technically they weren't eliminated because the Red Wings hadn't scored the tying goal yet, because it was came mere seconds later. Some people say that who were watching the American feed for the Caps Flyers said that as right before the Philadelphia Flyers pulled their goalie, that they announced on their broadcast that the Red Wings had tied it up. So I don't know. I mean, obviously, like I said, there's slight delays with all the different feeds. You don't get everything exactly the same second. It happened in real time, incredibly fast, and really, it would take a few minutes for the information to be relayed down to the bench. The Flyers would have been making their plans knowing that they needed a regulation win. So at the end of the day, I don't blame anybody. If you want to blame the Flyers for the Red Wings missing the playoffs, why don't you blame the Red Wings for missing the playoffs instead? They played the Capitals just a short time ago and lost 2-1. They had several overtime losses, several games that they lost by 1 goal. If they could have just got it to overtime, got 1 more point somewhere throughout that season, they would have been able to salvage their season and be a point ahead, and it wouldn't have been an issue. So I don't think you can blame anybody but yourselves, the team itself, for not getting in. I don't think any fan base is thinking logically if they don't look at things that way. Is it unfortunate? Yes. What a way to go down. It absolutely sucks. But that's what happened in real time. It was a crazy night in the NHL. So the Capitals get the final spot. All the other Eastern teams eliminated. Tonight we have a bunch of games, but nothing that's really going to impact the standings and the playoff matchups. But there is a pretty important game tonight, and that's the final game of the Arizona Coyotes at Mullet Arena, and the final game of the Arizona Coyotes franchise existence, at least in this incarnation, at least. They could possibly have Arizona Coyote hockey in the future. As we know, relocation is on the table. It's expected to be officially announced sometime in the next 24 to 48 hours. It's believed there's a Board of Governors meeting still scheduled for tomorrow. It could be voted on to have everything official. We don't know yet, but it's going to happen. It's just a matter of what day the announcement comes. It's expected sometime early next week. The team is going to Salt Lake City, Utah, to get a tour of the facilities, get a tour of the city, just kind of learn about where they're going to be playing, and get an idea where everything's at. They can learn what neighborhoods are best for them and all that kind of stuff, so they can start making arrangements to relocate not only their team but their life. So at the end of the day, that is expected. It's going to be a big night in the desert. All kinds of media attending. I believe they issued over 80 press passes or something like that, way more than usual. All kinds of national media that are there. Obviously, it's going to be packed. It's going to be emotional. I know they're doing the whiteout, so it's just like you'd see at a playoff game. I know they had the arena all prepped earlier, which I'm happy to see. I think it was, I'm sure it was towels or T-shirts or something that were set out for on all the seats. Yeah. I mean, I just want to remind everybody too. I mean, we could all talk about, and I've been of the strong opinion for a long time that this franchise has been needing change. It's never been stable. Really, if you take a look at its entire existence, it's been struggling to stay and figure it out. As a fan, that's frustrating to see. Obviously, you want what's best for the league, but just keep in mind the Arizona fans. There's people that have, I know, think about what it's like if you're not a Coyote fan, if you're a fan of any other team, think about what your team means to you and what you would feel like if it were taken from you. And some of these people, especially depending on their age, it's been part of their majority of their life, and they love the sport of hockey because of the Coyotes. If it weren't for the Coyotes, we may not have Austin Matthews. It's just that simple. The youth programs that it's spawned off of and developed has been phenomenal. We're getting more and more professional. It takes a couple generations, 20, 30 years before you start to see the impacts there. I look at the same thing in California. Hockey's been thriving in California for a long time now, but you're just starting to see in the last 5-10 years more and more players coming from that state. It's the same thing in Florida. All these markets that were once upon a time considered non-traditional are now traditional because they've had the history for a long time. But just be kind to Coyotes fans. I really hate to see people making fun of it and poking fun and whatever. These people are crushed that their team is leaving, and just remember if you were around for any other team moving, if you're a longtime fan, just remember that, right? So be kind. These people are having a big part of their lives ripped out. It doesn't matter how many Coyotes fans there are, because I know that's a common jokey here, that there's just not very many fans because they've struggled to support the team. But whatever. It doesn't matter. There are hardcore fans. It doesn't matter what anybody thinks. So just be kind and don't make fun of them. It's going to be a big night. I hope they play their hearts out, and I'm sure they will. I'd love to see them end with a win for their fan base, to have some kind of positive memory to go out with. They are playing the Edmonton Oilers, so it's not going to be an easy task. And the Oilers are resting a few players, but they'll have mostly their regular lineup, including all their big guns in there. So we'll see what happens tonight, but certainly want to wish the Coyotes well. And I certainly just want to offer my condolences, I guess, to the fans. I feel terrible that you're losing your team, and I certainly hope you can find a way to keep hockey in your lives, and I hope you can find a way to have hockey in the future as we hopefully get things figured out in that market. Some other news around the NHL today. We do have word on the Winter Classic, which came out on TNT earlier today. Of course, we know traditionally the Winter Classics played on January the 1st. Well, that's going to change this time around. The next matchup, of course, is going to be the St. Louis Blues and the Chicago Blackhawks. Will be played on December 31st to go on New Year's Eve at 5 p.m. I think the big part of this is to kind of avoid a ratings war, if you will, which they wouldn't win with college basketball in the U.S. Obviously, college basketball is huge. They tend to have one playoff game on the 31st, but 3 on the 1st. So I think it's more of a lesser of two evils, trying to make sure they get the best ratings as possible. I don't think it really matters when they have it. From an in-game perspective, they'll likely sell out. They always usually do. So at the end of the day, it's a little bit different, but it should help out with ratings. Same time though, it's New Year's Eve, right? So I wonder. It's hard to say how that'll go. We'll see how things work out with that experiment. Chris Wideman of the Montreal Canadiens is announcing his retirement from the game at age 34. Broke in with the Ottawa Senators, put in plenty of time in the minors, had a few stints with a couple other teams, had to leave the NHL for a while, played in the American League and KHL, came back with the Habs, had a good season. Last 2 years he's played, basically battled a lot of injuries. This year he really didn't play because of, I believe it was lingering back issues. 291 games played in 78 points. So after all that, we do have other news to get into. Of course, we know now a lot of the matchups for the playoffs. As I mentioned with the Capitals clinching last night, we know we're getting Florida versus Tampa, Boston versus Toronto. The Rangers will play the Capitals and the Canes will play the Islanders. All the East matchups are confirmed. In the West, we know Colorado will play Winnipeg. That's all we 100% can confirm right now. It's looking pretty likely that we're going to get Dallas and LA, Vancouver and Nashville, and then, of course, Edmonton and Vegas. But there's still a couple games left, which, if there's some surprise outcomes, could change. But that's what's likely going to happen. Stay tuned for my full playoff preview and prediction video, which will come as soon as those other games are played, that the matchups are confirmed. Most likely coming Thursday night or Friday morning, depending on when those games complete exactly. So that's coming here soon. We did have a quick note from the NHL waivers. The Red Wings today have Austin Czarnik on waivers. That's so he can go back to the American Hockey League and play in the rest of the season in the playoffs. So I don't expect anybody to pick him up given the time of year. We do have other news out of Detroit as well. They've signed one of their prospects, defenseman Shea. He gets a 3-year entry-level contract. Of course, he's played the last few years at the University of Denver, multiple-time national champion, 21 years old. He was drafted 36 overall in the 2021 NHL draft, and of course his brother Zeev is one of the top prospects in the 2024 NHL draft, also playing for that same powerhouse team in Denver, and is definitely going to be a top 10 pick for sure. Maybe, I don't know if he'll go much higher, maybe top 5. I don't know. He's been a rising guy that's getting a lot of attention, and a lot of people consider him to be the top D in the draft, but there's a few other D that are kind of in that category too. So we'll see. The Flyers have signed prospect Massimo Rizzo to a 2-year entry-level contract as well. Also a teammate of Buium with the University of Denver. Rizzo, of course, was originally drafted by the Canes in 2019. We talked about him back in the fall, before around the time of the beginning of the NHL season, just around the time training camps were opening. He was traded from Carolina to the Flyers because it wasn't expected that he would sign with the Canes. Flyers obviously did some research and figured out they would be able to sign him, so they traded for his rights, and they've indeed accomplished that signing here today. Marc-Andre Fleury is putting off retirement, so the Flower is not done after all. He signs a 1-year extension to remain with the Minnesota Wild, $2.5 million, so it's team friendly, still playing at a good level. Of course, he's 39, soon to be 40 years old, but Fleury basically said that he still has the passion for the game, still loving it, and wasn't quite ready to give it up, but he did confirm 100% that next year will definitely be his final season. GM Bill Guerin, of course, said when you have the opportunity to keep a guy like Fleury around for everything he brings in the room and on the ice, it's a no-brainer, and they'll figure things out. Obviously, they're hoping Philip Gustafson can bounce back next year and have a better season. His first year in Minnesota 2 years ago was a lot better. This year, he certainly took a step back. Obviously, Fleury sticking around will be a good mentor for him as well. So certainly, I'm happy to hear that he's sticking around because the game is better with Fleury in it. A couple of notes around the Montreal Canadiens here today. They've sent some of their prospects back to Laval after recalling them recently for some NHL action. Logan Mailloux, Joshua Waugh, and Jaden Struble all reassigned to the American Hockey League. And Kent Hughes and Jeff Gorton today announced that they've exercised the 2-year option in the contract of head coach Marty St. Louis. So that means that he's basically been extended. There was an option there in the contract for a 2-year extension already. He's got 1 year left, so that means he's now under contract for sure for the next 3 seasons. A lot of people have nothing but great things to say about what St. Louis has accomplished in Montreal. I feel he's doing a great job, so certainly worthy of the extension there for sure. In Ottawa, they've reassigned some of their players as well, including Zach Ostapchuk and Yuri Schmeichel, both sent back to the American Hockey League to compete for playoffs. Boko Imama may be sent back as well, but he's dealing with a hand injury. I'm not sure if he's fair to play or not. Thomas Chabot, unfortunately, injured again in their season finale last night in Boston. I'm not sure the exact timeline he's dealing with, but their season is over. Hopefully he won't be delayed too much to get into his off-season routine in training. The Washington Capitals today also confirmed their top prospect, Ryan Leonard, who was a high pick in last year's 2023 NHL draft, is not going to sign and turn pro. He will return to Boston College for his sophomore season. I know that there were some that thought Leonard would sign, given how well he did in college hockey. You could argue, besides winning a national championship with the Eagles, that personally he accomplished everything there was to do. But at the same time, I guess he's driven to continue with that. Obviously, with where the Capitals are at, he's, I guess, confident that staying where he is the best thing for him personally right now. So that's we're not expecting him to sign now. I'm sure Caps fans are a little disappointed going into next season, but at this point, he will remain in college. It's only going to make him better in the long run. I wonder what this means for his good friends and teammates, line mates, and top Sharks prospect Will Smith, and one of the top Ranger prospects in Gabe Perreault. Smith, Perreault, and Leonard, of course, all the national program in the United States, all went to the same college. They kind of conspired together after having great friendship, great chemistry, wanting to play together, all go to the BC Eagles. And, of course, I think they were devastated that they didn't get to win a national championship. They came so close, but Denver, unfortunately, were the big winners this year again. I don't think it's official by either of those other players or teams, but I do believe Smith and Perreault likely to return as well, and you can look for those 3 top prospects to terrorize U.S. college hockey next year and have Boston College, in a well-positioned spot to compete again for a national title. So we'll see if they can make out a little bit better next year. Obviously, some rumors around the NHL before we wrap things up here. I know in Pittsburgh, lots of frustration about the second straight year out of the playoffs. Lots of talk about the future of head coach Mike Sullivan. I know, obviously, since winning back-to-back Stanley Cups, the Penguins had 4 straight first-round losses, and then 2 years being out. Obviously, it's been a long time since 2017. They really haven't had, any success beyond the regular season since then. He's been there a long time. I believe it's 9 years altogether. A lot of people think it's time for a change, but I will say this. The Penguins were plagued by inconsistent goaltending, like a lot of teams. A lot of people believe goaltending is going to be at the top of their list, and maybe Nedeljkovic certainly outplayed Jerry, and Jerry was given a long-term deal by Dubas. So is that backfiring already? Could he possibly be moved? You got to wonder. The bottom 6 needs to be revamped. The secondary scoring has been a major issue for Pittsburgh. So I wonder about Erik Karlsson. What's going to happen with EK65? Is he going to get moved again? Is he really the best fit there, or can they move him and get enough of a package to make other areas of the team better? You really got to wonder what Dubas is going to have up his sleeve. I know Karlsson said all the right things about liking Pittsburgh, and I believe what he's saying is true and genuine, but what's best for the Penguins? That's what Dubas needs to figure out here, and that's a tough question to answer right now. So you get the future of Karlsson. Could he be moved? What's Crosby going to do entering the final year of his contract? Obviously, it's widely expected. I think everybody would be shocked if he doesn't sign an extension. The big question is what that extension is going to be. I know a lot of reporters felt he was probably going to do 2 or 3 year extension, probably upwards around $10 million, which is still a good discount compared to what other players make around the NHL, even though it's actually a raise for him based on his previous deal. But some think that maybe he'll go 1 year by 1 year at a time and do the 1 year approach. So again, that's tricky. What's Crosby think about all this? We've talked about this before. As much as it would be quite shocking, could Sid move on? We don't know, right? Lots of questions facing this franchise. Certainly things did not go the way they expected, even though they were in the playoff race right up until game 81-82. It's still not good enough, and they expect better. And, I don't really put a lot of blame on the coach. I'm not sure that Sullivan, could he have done things differently? Sure, but if you don't have the personnel, you don't have the personnel. At the same time, you can make an argument that, it's been a long time and maybe a new voice would be beneficial there, but I don't know. Be interesting to see. Lots of moving parts in Pittsburgh, lots of questions, like I said, between Sullivan, Karlsson, Crosby. Goaltending, lots of things happening to keep an eye on there. I would suspect if for any reason they were going to move on from Sullivan, I would think it would happen toot sweet, right away. So if we don't hear any kind of an announcement out of the Penguins organization, in the next week, I would suspect that it's not going to happen. I know Gary Bettman tells NHL teams, especially ones that eliminate from the playoffs, to get their business done quickly if they're going to be, because they don't want distractions from the first round of the playoffs. So they would prefer that if teams are going to be making big announcements, they're going to, kind of take the news cycle in their direction to do it quickly when their season ends. So we'll see. Like I said, I don't know if we're going to get huge news like that out of the Penguins, but if we do, then I would suspect it'll come quick. In Ottawa as well, speculation there from Bruce Garriock of TSN and the Ottawa Sun post media talking about what Steve Staios is going to do in his first offseason as general manager. There's speculation they should have a contract extension hopefully done for Shane Pinto very quickly. It's I wouldn't call it imminent, but it's close, apparently, looking at a 5 and 6 year deal option, so that would be good. They do view him as a piece of their core, which Staios himself said on an interview last night on the TV broadcast. Lots of talk about goaltending again. The fact is they can't return with this tandem of Korpisalo and Forsberg. It was a biggest letdown of all the things that went wrong. It was by far the biggest issue, and they need to address it hands down. So there's talk about, can you trade Korpisalo? Would you look at a buyout? The buyout really isn't all that bad, to be honest. Forsberg's got 1 year left. They could figure out trading or doing something with him more so than Korpisalo. Korpisalo is going to be a lot tougher to do, but ideally they need to find themselves a stud goaltender. Garriock does reference the fact that they had discussions with the Bruins around Linus Ullmark and that they may go back and see if there's conversations to be had. If they go that route, I like Ullmark. He's had a couple of terrific years with the Bruins, but he's used to playing in a tandem with Swayman, where Swayman plays a lot too. You can't bring Ullmark in and expect him to play 60, 65 games. You're going to need a goalie to play with him and to hold up his fair share of the bargain so we can play a similar style of tandem like he has with Swayman for it to be most successful. So you might need 2 goalies unless you think Matt Sogard is ready to jump up and take that role. And Sogard's had flashes of brilliance, but he's also shown flashes that he needs more time. So I don't know if you want to put that on the kid just yet. And Forsberg hasn't shown that he can handle it with any kind of consistent basis either. So again, questions remain around goaltending. Obviously, some other pieces around bottom 6 and some of their D. There could be other movement in Ottawa. We know Dominic Kubalik won't be back. Some players they're debatable right now. Eric Brandstrom, Mark Kastelik. Boris Kachuk, it's hard to say. Like they may return, but they may not. There's definitely going to be change to this roster. It sounds between what we heard from Jacques Martin, Steve Staios, that they want to mix in some more experience. They have the cap space to do stuff with if they can figure things out. Just a matter of what direction they go. So I fully suspect there to be maybe instead of calling it the summer of Pierre, maybe we'll have the summer of Steve, and we'll see what Staios can do in Ottawa, but I expect big things for sure. So let me know your thoughts on all of today's news and rumors down in the comments. We'll discuss further. If you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with all the news, rumors, and analysis of all 32 NHL teams. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you next time.